I think the legal industry is pretty unique in that half the people that work in it are prefixed with the word non. So we're all non-lawyers, and we're all seen as fee burners rather than fee earners. And as Richard has said, there's my first one, as Richard has said, actually, we are the people that are going to be able to think, imagine, and drive the change in the industry. Because actually, that's not where the lawyers are best spent. Lawyers are incredibly capable people. I used to be one. We're incredibly capable people, and we're incredibly capable people at winning work and doing work. Anything beyond those two things, there are more competent people at a better price point to do it. And therefore, it's down to us. One of the interesting things, however, in many law firms is that when you try and change something, yes, you're expecting some resistance from the lawyers, but hands up who's felt resistance from your colleagues, from your other non-lawyers in the business. That you try and change something and you're told by, and we love them, we're told by finance, we can't do that, that's not the way we do things here. And actually, one of the challenges we have at the moment, I think, is that the very support functions that have the capability of reimagining and driving change actually reinforce those things that are happening in businesses at the moment. So I'm going to talk a bit about aligning strategy with client needs, a bit about how the millennials add into this mix. We've just been through the process at DLA Piper where we've just written and published and launched our strategy for the next 3 years. It meant that James Craddock and I had to go to Orlando, which sounds lovely, but it was like being in an expensive prison, really, for 5 days where we talked about this stuff. So what will I cover? I'm going to cover bad strategy. How's strategy generally done in law firms at the moment? I'm going to cover good strategy, as I see it. I'm happy to be confronted. What clients want. We're going to talk about the dawn of procurement. I'm sure all of us have had to deal with procurers, talking about the general counsel as our buyer. Quite like the general counsel as buyer. They speak our language. Not so sure about the procurers. What have they done for the mix? The millennial complexity. What complexity? We've got a complicated model. There's two kind of models. There's complicated, and a law firm's a complicated beast. But actually, if we can get all those individual bits right, we can drive it. But actually, there's a level of complexity, which means it's always changing, which millennials have added into the mix. Classic with strategy, where do you invest? Where are we going to place our bets? At the moment, we're in a market which is demanding more for less. We can reimagine how we can do amazing things, how we can bring different kinds of advice, but actually the market's not ready to buy that yet. What does the market want today? The market wants more for less. Doing more for less, however, is only the bet we place to still be at the roulette table tomorrow, and we're going to need another bet tomorrow to carry on, and another bet tomorrow to carry on. So where do we invest in strategy? And then, if I've got time, I'll try and take some questions. So strategy, what is bad strategy? Most law firms ask themselves this question. If you ever go to a team strategic away day, you go away with a management strategic away day, this is the question every single lawyer writes. Picks up on Richard's point about their own personal development. What sort of work do we want to do next year? And what they say is, here's the pyramid. And years ago, up until recently, up until Richard Susskind came in and got us all fixated on cost rather than value, which is one of the other big problems we have, there was this pyramid of legal work. And obviously we've got the higher value stuff at the top, which there's less of, the lower value, the stuff that demands a lower price at the bottom. I don't like the word commoditized. It's almost as offensive as the other C word to me. We've got this broader piece at the bottom. And we all used to compete as firms to do all of those things. And yes, some of us found ourselves in slightly different things, but everybody wanted everything. Put your hands up if you're in a firm that doesn't say, we want to be just doing the work at the top of the pyramid. The answer to the declining, the driving down of cost, the driving down of the price point in the market for most law firms is not to make ourselves more efficient, not to transform the way we do things so we can meet that price expectation. It's, do you know what? If we can't afford to do the work down here, we're all going to do this work at the top. So instead of all competing as it was for the whole piece, we're now all competing for that bit at the top. We want to do that. We don't want to do that. And every firm thinks they're the only firm to come up with this strategy. Good strategy. So what question did we ask ourselves at DLA Piper that wasn't around that? And yes, we had people, and I'm sure James still has this every day where people are telling James what work they want to do. But what question is it we should be asking? What would delight our clients? What do our clients need? Now, I don't think clients are always able to articulate necessarily what they need. We all know that Henry Ford legend. I'm not sure if he actually ever said it or not, but if I ask my clients what they want, they'd ask for faster horses. But what is it that would really delight our clients? We don't need them to tell us, because we see more client situations than they see. They only see their one situation. They know what they need from their view of the world, but they don't know what's going on in other clients. So what would delight our clients? And at the moment, the answer is we want cheaper legal services, we want better legal services, and we want to manage fewer relationships. Why cheaper? So the legal profession bumbled along till about 2007, 2008. Yes, Susskind had written his book. Yes, we had the Clementi report. Yes, we looked at how we change and try and drive commoditized services into the industry. But broadly, not very much happened. And if you go back and you Google to 2008, there were headlines in all of the supreme legal publications we have, which talk about the £1,000 an hour lawyer. Things were pretty much not changing. Our cost was going up. The power in the negotiating relationship was with the lawyers, not with the clients. And then hits the global financial crisis. And what happened in the global financial crisis was two kind of counter, but kind of combining pressures. The first one is there's more regulatory burden on our clients than there's ever been before. Because the answer to governments is not let's have better law, let's have better regulators, let's put laws in place that actually stop people fixing interest rates and punish the people that do it. There's still no convictions for that. The answer is let's burden the organisations with more regulation. So thin government, more regulatory burden in the organisation. So they've got more regulatory burden. Adhering to the regulatory burden is much harder than it ever was. So back when I was a general counsel of a regulated entity. Once a year, I had lunch with the regulator. We blew off the dusty manual where we agreed that we hadn't really been that naughty, and we shook hands, and that was all we ever saw. And that was the limit to our regulatory adherence. We had a manual. But now you have to self-monitor, you have to self-report, you have to observe. So there's more regulation. The cost of adhering to that regulation is higher. The impact of regulation, third, the impact of regulation is much higher than it ever was. You know, back in my day when I was general counsel, I breached the Data Protection Act. I got fined £5,000. Quite frankly, breaching the Data Protection Act could bring the firm in $500,000. It was a cost of doing business. But now, the impact of that, the fines are catastrophic. They're huge. Because actually, we've got this sentiment of public outrage, and we have to hammer organisations and give them huge fines. So there's more regulation, it's more complicated to deal with, the cost of getting it wrong is higher, and actually the quality of the regulation is getting worse. Because back in the day, when regulation was produced, it was produced following a green paper and a white paper, and they asked the stakeholders and all of the communities involved, and it was written by a legal draftsman, and it was well considered. Now, we've got idiots making it up on Twitter. Cameron decides to tweet that he's going to hammer down on energy companies, and then they've got to retrofit the regulation to 140 characters. So the quality of regulation is worse. So our clients have got this thing that they've just got this burgeoning regulatory burden. But also, the lid's been lifted on legal. Our clients have already leaned out their IT functions, they've outsourced their HR functions to Dublin, their accounts functions to India, they've brought in SAP, they've done all of those things. And legal, which was always in headcount terms a lot smaller, because of this increasing regulatory burden, we're the last man standing. Everyone's pointing at legal. Everyone's pointing at our general counsels and saying, you've got to be cheaper. The price point of legal comes down. And when we go back to that pyramid, one of the flaws in that pyramid is, yes, you get paid more for the higher premium work than the lower value work, but the price point of that's coming down as well. It's all coming down. So our clients need cheaper. What is better? So here is a number of things that I've taken from the Beaton report. George Beaton is a researcher in Australia, and he runs this report every year. And he's been doing this for about 20 years. And this is a hierarchy of things that clients put as important. So what do clients want? They want us to be responsive, they want us to be understanding of their business, reliable, they want our advice to be commercial, easy to do business with, they want excellent communication. Cost comes at number 7, price comes at number 8, they want a good rapport, they want quality documentation. Leading technical advice comes at number 11 in the hierarchy of buying decisions. It's a hygiene factor. You can't give good technical advice, that's fine, but actually, where's the differential there? You know, does anybody have generally better lawyers than anyone else? Access to partners caring about client innovation. Myths debunked. These are the things that we think are important at the moment. These are the things that if we went out and we were setting our strategy, we would say, let's invest in more leading technical advice. Actually, is that going to drive any better outcomes? Yeah, you need strong benches. Yes, you need clients to be able to see you've got the capability. Innovation. I think one of the biggest problems with innovation is clients don't want to be told about innovation. They just want stuff to be better. So let's stop talking about innovation and actually just make what we're doing better than what we're doing. And strong brand. Every one of us, every one of our firms talks about, oh, your transformation idea is absolutely fantastic, but what would this mean to our brand? Well, it's number 15 in a client's list of essential things that they need. Under responsiveness, basic good service is more important to a client than brand and technical advice. Why fewer? This is how most organizations source their legal work at the moment. Back to the pyramid. We have this pyramid. They have lots of firms. Some are more expensive than others, but actually they use them in a randomly haphazard way, and they just have a headache. Dealing with that level of complexity, that huge base of legal service providers, whilst on the face of it, it means you marry up capability to the work you do, actually on an organizational basis, it's just really complex. So what have procurement done about this? Procurement come in and they help us organize this stuff in structures. And they say, okay, well, we want you to pitch for the 3 kinds of work. Who wants to do the high value work? Who wants to do the everyday work? Who wants to do the C word work? No one wants to do the C word work. And they've brought in all these really smart platforms. I'm sure all of you in your organizations are having to deal with Timemetrics, DataCert, Serengeti, others available, where procurers are going, do you know how we control costs? Is we monitor how much we're spending. Again, cost, not value, cost. And we've got these high-value people, and we've got these low-value people, and they'll fit in the mark. But the problem is, we go back to that strategy, they don't get anyone saying, I want to do the low-value work. They don't get quality firms who are able to deliver a quality service bidding to do that low-value work because everybody just wants to do the top-value work. So the procurement model isn't really working. And I think there's a frustration, as a former GC, you'll know this, there's a frustration and a tension between the GCs, the in-house legal teams, and procurers, because procurers are trying to drive this model of structure, and it just doesn't work. They're not getting the providers they want in the place to do work. They're not being able to build relationships. Procurement version 2. We're now being forced to talk to each other. So the big banks are the best example of this. The big banks spend a considerable sum of the annual legal spend that's out there. And they're now all telling us, well, actually, do you know how we save this problem? Is instead of you picking that you want to do high value work, you have to go out and find a friend in the panel that's not in the group you're in, and you have to build a relationship so you can work together. And that's how we'll deal with it. So procurement have got this new answer. Problem is, that won't work either. When Rio Tinto outsourced to CPA, massive headline in the press, kind of coming of the LPOs, the business absolutely understood why it's cheaper to hire someone doing certain kinds of work in India perfectly well, as opposed to someone doing that work in Wall Street. What they didn't invest in, though, the clients, is how do you break that work down and decide which goes where? So something would come across a very busy in-house legal desk, and that lawyer would look at it and say, I kind of know some of this has got to go to CPA, but I can't really work out how I break it up. And if some of it goes there and some of it goes there, how am I going to manage all of this stuff? It's really complicated and it's giving me a headache. How am I going to manage all this stuff? So what they did was they gave it to the Wall Street firm with the cunning plan, we're going to give it to you, but you've got to use CPA. And of course, the Wall Street firm said, absolutely, we love CPA, they're fantastic, but this is a bit complicated for them. We can't really, because you're asking them to give away their revenue. You're giving them the offering of this £1 million, £2 million, £3 million job, and they're asking to give some of the revenue away. And they're not going to do it because they're still rewarded, as Richard said, number 2, they're still rewarded for what they're paid for. It's hideous. So clearly, in doing our strategy with our clients, we need to think again. We don't need to be led by procurement. Procurement, we've all had an unfortunate experience with procurement. We don't like what they're doing. Actually, legal is a service. It's not a commodity, which is why I don't like the C word, and therefore you need to commission a service. You don't need to procure. Procurement buy things. Legal isn't things. There's a lot of services that aren't things. They need to buy outcomes, not things. So we need to think again if we need to drive this. Add to this the millennial complexity. This is a huge issue for us, I think, in the legal services industry. Here's a slide that I grabbed from the well-known website, the Caribbean Leadership. But I grabbed it because I quite like the infographics on here. But it's a huge issue for us. Because actually, we have got a highly motivated workforce who are connected, but they completely lack loyalty. Gone are the days when someone comes in the door as a trainee and they spend their time and they're quite happy doing, like I used to, microfiching and photocopying and proofreading and all those really high valuable tasks that I'd worked so hard to train to do. And they're happy to do that, and then they become a qualified lawyer, and they're happy to lose the weekends and lose girlfriends and boyfriends because they don't have any time to have relationships and miss holidays. And then at some time in the future, they become a senior associate and then a legal director. And then there's this thing called partnership, and they've got partnership as a goal. Gone are those days. People don't want to work as hard as they used to work. They just don't. We get people coming straight out of university, and it's almost that kind of like, okay, what have you got to deliver me? There's no kind of rolling their sleeves up and getting involved. Yes, they're ambitious, they're keen, but they want to do good work now. They also don't want to stick at something. Loyalty is increasingly a rarefied commodity. Even in our partnership levels, the rise of the lateral hire. Our partners who quite possibly came from the baby boomer generation are actually millennials themselves. Partnership that used to be for life and was a shared endeavour, and I'd go into partnership with someone and I'd have a good year and they'd have a good year, and if I had a bad year, they'd look after me in their good years and vice versa, and there was this shared partnership, which is where the word comes from. That's gone. I'm a big swinging dick. I make lots of money. If I can't get the greatest share of that money out of this firm, there's a firm down the road that will give me a fix, and I can just tromp over to there. So we've got this issue of a lack of loyalty, and actually the transferability of skills quite often, as with the football manager or the football player, don't always work out. How many of us have all hired expensive lateral hires only for their clients to not come with them? I think it's the majority of cases. Very rarely do these transfers work because these things aren't transportable. Their knowledge is transportable. They bring it in their head. But actually, this stuff isn't transportable. How many of us have lost competencies where teams of partners have gone off and gone to a competitor? The headlines in the Lawyer magazine or Legal Week are like this all the time. Team defect 2, team move. Is this the end of firm A being able to do work B? So we've got this problem that we've got a business that we need to think again, and actually the people that we've generally relied on to do that work aren't there. This brings us back to what are the assets in the law firm, and again this picks up on the presentation we've just followed. If you were asked, what is the core asset in your law firm? Sorry, if your partners were asked, what's the core asset in the law firm? What would the answer be? People. It's always people. Sometimes it's brand. It's our people and our brand. The problem is, both of those are temporal. Both of those can change. Kingswood Mallesons. There's no S.J. Berwin anymore. There's Kingswood Mallison, a brand that's existed for 50 years, was part of the legal firmament, was an establishment firm. That brand's just disappeared. Who remembers Russell Jones and Walker? Another old, established legal brand. It's just gone. Yesterday I was buying a new, many good things about DLA, but somebody likes stealing iPhone cables off my desk, so I had to go and buy another one. And I went into EE, which I don't work with, but I just needed an iPhone cable. And I said to the guy, how much stuff do you sell under the old T-Mobile or Orange brands now? Now, Orange was a brand. I used to work for Orange. I used to be general counsel at one of the Orange businesses. Orange was a brand that when it came out, people went and bought T-shirts with the Orange logo on it. People would actually buy them and wear them. It was such a big, different brand. It was huge. The brand doesn't exist anymore. They don't sell anything under the Orange brand anymore. It's all under EE. So brands are temporal. People are temporal. We live in a different world. We need to invest in other things. We need to invest in knowledge. We need to invest in platform, again, picking up on Richard's point. And we do need good people, but we need those people to plug in and fit with the way in which the platform and the knowledge work. So if we think about our next bet, we're at the moment, obviously, we're the same as every other firm. We're looking at how do we do stuff more cost effectively? How do we deal with things efficiently? But if we think about what would delight our clients, why would DLA Piper make a difference to clients that perhaps some other firms can't make? For us, it's really simple. We did more M&A transactions than any other firm internationally last year, and we are the largest litigation department in the world. We see more problems for more clients in more places than any other firm. Our benefit to our clients is not the legal. That's in books. It's freely available online. We can Google that stuff. Our benefit to our clients is we've either seen the problem you've got today before, or we've seen something sufficiently like it somewhere else, and we can draw learnings from that and apply that to the problem you have. In which case, when we're talking about knowledge in the firm, when we're looking at our strategy around knowledge, the strategy can't be around how we produce precedents. Do we even need to produce precedents now? PLC make brilliant precedents. Oh, no, that's our IP. That's our IP. Our IP is the value of the documentation we produce. Is it? Is it really? Our value is the advice we give to our clients. We also used to train lawyers, and we still train lawyers in this way, to know everything. This is how we train lawyers. And this is why we have such discrete specialisms within law. You've become a corporate lawyer, we're going to teach you the Companies Act, we're going to teach you the listing rules, we're going to teach you the Takeover and Merger Code, some international treaty stuff. And actually, there's too much to know just doing general stuff. So I'm not going to just be a general corporate lawyer, I'm going to be an M&A lawyer. Then I'm not just going to be an M&A lawyer, I'm going to be an M&A lawyer in the tech sector. And I'm not just going to be an M&A lawyer in the tech sector, I'm going to be an M&A in the microchip sector. And increasingly, because we still feel our lawyers need to know everything, and we try and train them to know everything, and that's how knowledge is imparted. It's imparted to their heads. We're getting more and more specialist lawyers, and we're going to get to the point very shortly where two things will happen. One, our lawyers will be so specialist, we can't keep them gainfully employed, for their full utilisation numbers 100% of the time, or they're going to render themselves obsolete every 2 years. So we need to train our lawyers in a different way. We need to capture knowledge in a different way, and we need to train our lawyers in a different way. And what does that mean for knowledge? Because there are three challenges to knowledge. There's capturing it, there's storing it, and being able to interrogate it, and the third one is being able to draw insight from it. And that's a big challenge, and that's a challenge that we in this room are going to have to wrestle with. When we're coming up with our strategy for the future, how we delight our clients by actually providing what they want, which is commerciality, good responses, being able to solve their problems, we're going to have to try and get a different kind of knowledge, and we're going to have to capture that from our organisations. And that's a big issue. I mean, how do you capture stuff? Within the firm, within our firm, James and I know, either in people's heads or in archive boxes, the answer to most of our clients' problems exist. But how do we capture and access that? It's a big challenge for us. And the problem is you go to technology companies, you go to any of the big technology companies, and they've got a solution, but they're all single-point solutions. One of my big frustrations with the tech organisations in legal at the moment is because they're traditionally, and it's a problem for them as well, because they've traditionally sold to partners, and they've sold to the corporate partners, they develop something that's at a cost point and a definition where a corporate partner can say, yes, I know how that's going to work for my practice and I'm going to buy it. But actually for us, the challenge is now, we can't buy a series of single point solutions and try and knit these things together and come up with, if we export an Excel from this and dump it in, it's just inefficient. So we need to be engaging with the tech suppliers and saying, look, the old days are over. The partners aren't going to be buying this stuff. Back to the point. The business strategists need to understand what is it we need our systems to do and go out and define that so that we get solutions that are able to give us this holistic view. So knowledge is important. The platform is important. How do we access, store that knowledge? And then we need to train our people differently. We need to stop training our lawyers to know everything. They need to be able to do three things in the new world. They need to be able to interpret a client's problem, actually really interpret the client's problem. Listen to what the clients say. Listen to the outcomes the clients need. They'll all claim they do this. But survey after survey after survey is telling us our industry is not doing this. We need to listen to our client's problem. We need to be able to interrogate the knowledge we have within our organisation, whether that's sectorial knowledge, whether that's geographic knowledge, whether that's legal knowledge. And then interrogating that, we need to be interpreting that back to a solution that works for our clients. And that's where we need our lawyers to be. We don't need them to worry about how you capture and store and generate knowledge. We don't need them to worry about what platforms they're on. We don't even need to worry perhaps so much about where we get our people from, but we need them to focus on those things. So maybe we won't be a future of a firm without lawyers, but the number of lawyers we need will become increasingly smaller, and they will be transient through the organisation. So what does this mean for us? Where have we got to invest to be different? Right, so there's two core considerations where we're deciding to make our big bets. We're on the roulette table. We're still there tomorrow morning because we've managed to do cheaper. Where are our big bets going to go next? We've got to look at two things. First of all is the barrier of duplication. Why is Google so successful? Because the algorithm they created was so fantastic and so complex, it's very difficult for others to duplicate and replicate that thing. So they've got a very high barrier of duplication. There's no point in going out and making a big splash, and all of our firms have been guilty of this, going out to the press and saying, we've made this amazing thing, and you say, yeah, everybody can do that. But also, what's the client's perception of value? There's no point in investing if the client's not going to realise or give value to what it is you're doing. So stuff that's down here is just an internal enabler. It makes us a bit more efficient, but the client doesn't realise it. That's not a big bet. It's something we need to be doing on a tactical basis, time and time again. Stuff that the clients value but is easily duplicated is external qualitative. And again, we need a program of this stuff. Keep going on. I think one of the interesting things about strategy and about changing strategy is you don't get the strategy right and then that's your strategy. It needs to keep being manipulated and changed. As Tetlock talks about, there are two kinds of people. There are foxes and hedgehogs. And I think this quite often describes the difference between lawyers and us non-lawyers. So the hedgehog knows one big thing, and the fox knows many small things. And what a hedgehog does with new information is they take that information, they use it to reinforce the one big thing they know. So I found this new information, and it's now telling me the thing I always knew was true is really true, and here's the evidence to back me up. And what the fox does is they take new information and they adapt and change. It's what the Greeks called metic intelligence, the intelligence of the navigator. We need to constantly be doing these things and changing and driving and adapting. Strategy can't stand still. Medium value, medium duplication is the external differentiator. Again, that's temporal. High barrier of duplication, but low client value, that's a sustainable advantage. If we can work out how to do something better than anybody else, but the client doesn't see it, it just makes us more efficient or faster or reduces the number of errors in what we do, it's a sustainable advantage against our market, but the clients aren't really going to value it. If we want to really think about strategy, what we've got to think is, what are the clients really going to value? And what's going to be the large barrier to duplication? And that's where we've got to place our big bets. So at the moment, we're in a position where we need to offer what the clients want today, which is cheaper, fewer, better. But tomorrow, we need to think about how do we move from being the same as everybody else, these two things that just constantly improve our service, and actually we make some more dramatic bets. Thank you.
Stephen. Cheers.
Thank you.